Live from the Xfinity Studios at WVON. You're listening to Chicago's legendary urban radio station, celebrating 50 years of informing, entertaining, and educating Chicago. And now, the nation on iHeartRadio. We are the talk of Chicago. 1690 WVON.
Sight. Once again, it's on.
Welcome to the best part of your Sunday night, the Sports Cypher, the best damn sports show on the radio. I am Maya Akai, and navigating the talk airwaves with me tonight, Gabe Salgado is back.
Follow me on Twitter at Gabe Salgado82. You can also find us on Twitter at The Sports Cypher. Find us on Facebook at The Sports Cypher as well. And, of course, you got to follow Maya as well at The Sports Chica. Otherwise, you just don't believe in Twitter if you don't follow her.
I don't know, my Twitter followers don't quite show that kind of weight, but that's good enough. We have a full show for you as we get ready for the NFL season to be kicking off in just a week from tonight. As you know, every week we've gone around the NFL, and we saved the best for last. That would be, of course, the NFC North, as well as the AFC North. So we're going to kick off the show with Around the League, AFC North. We're going to have on Andrea Angst, who is an NFL writer as well as a lead writer for BleacherReport.com that covers the AFC North. She's going to start the show with us. Around 9:45, we will start to talk NFC North with A.J. Harris, who's a sports writer and analyst for BlueDeuceSportsRadio.com. That's going to be a lot to talk about. Bears, of course, are in the NFC North, so we have a lot to chop up.
Yes, we do.
We have a lot to chop up.
And only so little time to do it.
And I'm pretty sure after the last two preseason games, we have a lot to chop up, of course, so we're going to get it in. At 10:04, Gabe will give you the scoreboard updates, what's happened around the league from baseball, basketball, the whole shebang. We'll continue Bears talk at 10:20, and at 10:40, Gabe is taking over the mic and doing Gabe Salgado's college football preview.
Run!
We're going to talk some Notre Dame, some Northern Illinois.
Northwestern.
So for all my college football people, that season has kicked off, and we will not neglect you. So we're going to talk college football at 10:40. So make sure we have on Lamont Pope, who's going to cover Notre Dame and talk about that for us, as well as Kyle Roche. I hope I'm saying that right, who is the NU beat writer for Midway Madness. So we're going the full gamut tonight. We're going from pro to college, pillar to post, so get ready. If you want to join the conversation, you can at 773-591-1690. So if you want to share your comment with the airwaves, because I'm pretty sure after the last preseason game with the Bears, there are some things that people, they probably have some questions.
The last two preseason games.
But it is just preseason, but it was very lackluster, and obviously we have cut down to the 53-man roster. Are there probably some surprising cuts that people maybe question why they happened? So
yeah, there's a lot of buzz about that.
So we are definitely going to be talking quite a bit of Bears once we get to that 9:45. So like I said, you want to join the conversation, 773-591-1690, or feel free to always get social with the show at the Sports Cypher on Twitter, as well as Facebook, at the Sports Chica on Facebook and Twitter, and
at Gabe Salgado82.
There you go. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into our NFL Around the League. And on the line, we have Andrea Angst, who is the NFL writer for BleacherReport.com. She covers the AFC North, and she's going to break down that division that covers, and actually quite a heavy division, because you're talking about the Cincinnati Bengals, the Baltimore Ravens, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Cleveland Browns, who got their one preseason win from the Bears. So, without further ado, how are you doing, Andrea?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on tonight, Maya.
Glad to have you on, because this is one of those divisions, the AFC North it kind of has that feel where you've got three teams that when you start out the season, you don't know what direction they're going to go. With obviously last year, the Bengals winning that division, 11-5, going to the playoffs. The Steelers and the Ravens both went 8-8, and then Cleveland was somewhere at the bottom, was it 4-12, I do believe?
Yes, 4-12.
It's one of those divisions that you definitely have three teams that can, kind of shoot for the division and obviously go for the playoffs. So let's kind of start with the Cincinnati Bengals, because with them obviously having a decent preseason 2-2, not that matters. Kind of where do they stand? Let's start offensively. Andy Dalton had a great year last year, over 4,000 yards. I don't think there's any sense of concern. They had the backup in Jason Campbell. I'm pretty sure we'll never see A.J. McCarron, so I'm not quite worried about that. But what does he have offensively besides A.J. Green? When you talk about the running game, they released Ben Jarvis Green-Ellis, who I guess they felt was lackluster. Is Giovanni Bernard, the second-year player, is he going to really have depth for that running game?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, with Jay Gruden leaving to be the head coach in Washington, they promoted Hugh Jackson to offensive coordinator. He was their running backs coach. He does have a run-heavy kind of background. I mean, dating back to when he was coordinator and head coach for the Oakland Raiders. So you're going to see, you know, a more run-focused offensive attack from the Bengals this year, as compared to what we saw with Gruden, who, you know, didn't really find the run game to be all that important. Would kind of, you know, take it away in key moments. So, I think it's going to be a really good year for Giovanni Bernard. Obviously, he's very versatile, very fast, can catch the football. And obviously, you know, with the release of Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, it's clear that Jeremy Hill is going to really step up, be that power runner, the goal line back there. So obviously, you know, the run game is going to get a lot more of a focus, which is great for Andy Dalton because, you know, as he said, he had a very good 2013 season. But the thing is, he doesn't have good postseason performances. The Bengals, you know, gone to the playoffs every year. He's been with them at their 0-3. He's thrown 6 interceptions in the playoffs. You know, only 1 touchdown. So if they can, you know, make this run game, you know, more prominent, they can take the pressure off of Dalton, and, you know, hopefully he can become more consistent, be more comfortable in that kind of system.
With obviously the NFL kind of being the pass-first league that it's developed into the last couple of years, you know, what does A.J. Green have on the other side that kind of spreads out the wide receiving core?
Yeah, obviously, you know, you have A.J. Green. He's a deep threat, but he can also catch passes, you know, all over the field. He's not like a Torrey Smith type where, you know, he's really just a deep target. Obviously, you know, Marvin Jones is going to be coming back from his injury at some point. You know, that'll help a lot. But Mohamed Sanu, he has really stepped up as a receiver in Marvin Jones' absence. And so it's going to be interesting to see, you know, how he takes that leap once the regular season begins. You know, obviously now with Hugh Jackson again, the 2 tight end situation with Jermaine Gresham plus Tyler Eifert, I think will, you know, be more prominent than it was in previous seasons with Jay Gruden. So there are a lot of options there with the passing game, as well as, you know, an amplified run game. So it looks like this could be a really balanced and kind of, you know, dangerous, unpredictable offense this year.
Andrea, 2 offensive questions for you. One, you know, what happened to Ben Jarvis Green Ellis? He seemed like he was productive for so long and he just kind of tailed off. And 2, how serious were the Bengals about really keeping A.J. McCarron as he was one of their last cuts?
You know, I think McCarron, you know, he's going to be a practice squad kind of guy. Obviously, he's coming off of, you know, he's not completely healthy. They don't really necessarily need to carry a third quarterback on the 53-man roster, so I'm not terribly surprised about that. With Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, you know, the writing was kind of on the wall for him once the Bengals did draft Jeremy Hill in the 2nd round this year. But the organization loved him. The owner, Mike Brown, loves Green Ellis. Everybody respects him. He's very respected in the locker room. And the feeling was, you know, he would be welcome to stay around in a reduced role if he wanted. But if he thought that he could be productive somewhere else, that they would, you know, be good enough to grant him his release and he can try his hand elsewhere. You know, but obviously, you know, he's a little bit, you know, he's getting a little bit older. He's not always, you know, he's not been the most productive running back over his career. And, you know, a guy like Jeremy Hill, who's a rookie, is obviously far less expensive. So you put all those things together, plus their respect for Green Ellis, and it makes sense that they would, you know, let him go and let him explore other options.
Defensively, I read this week that obviously Cincinnati feels that Burfict is a good fit for them defensively and have given him, a 4-year, $20 million contract. So we expect to see him in a Bengals uniform for a bit. But tell us a bit about Dre Fitzpatrick. I mean, he's a 3rd-year quarterback out of Alabama, and it seems like there's quite a buzz that he's going to be a young, dynamic player in their secondary.
You know, he's been kind of a disappointment, to be honest. You know, he's had a lot of injuries that have kept him off the field. He hasn't been able to really physically work through the defensive playbook, and I think that they're really trying to hope that he'll come on this year. He's been a strong, you know, contributor on special teams during the preseason, so that's at least a way for him to stay on the roster, get some practice reps at cornerback, and hopefully, just because the Bengals secondary is a lot older, Leon Hall, Terrence Newman, Adam Jones, so they want to get him involved eventually in the starting quarterback rotation, you know, along with Darqueze Dennard, who they drafted this year. So hopefully, you know, he can catch on this year, stay healthy, be able to be on the practice field and not just have to be only in meetings and be physically limited in that way. Then hopefully, you know, he can meet that potential of being that first-round quarterback. Excuse me.
All right, so what's really interesting, let's move on and talk about the Baltimore Ravens, who who looked quite efficient in preseason. They went 4-0. So you got to look at that and say, okay, they've added some things in the fact of Gary Kubiak is joining them as their offensive coordinator. So I wonder how dynamic that's going to make them on offense. Obviously, Ray Rice will be missing those first 2 games because he's got to serve that suspension. But overall, Flacco, he's healthy. He's got a good old line. You've got Dennis Pitta at tight end. With Ray Rice being absent, how much is that going to affect their run game? Have they started to develop that a bit overall?
I think it's going to affect them positively, to be honest. Ray Rice's backup, Bernard Pierce, comes from a similar offensive system to what Gary Kubiak runs with the outside zone blocking, the one-cut running. He's actually far better suited for this offensive scheme than Ray Rice. So him being the starter for the first 2 weeks really gives him an opportunity to step up, even take a hold of this starting running back position. Ray Rice, is quite expensive. He's a PR nightmare in my opinion right now.
Yes.
So if they can find a way to move on from him, Bernard Pierce would be the right way to go about it. The big question is going to be with the offensive line. Last year, the Ravens had the very worst run-blocking offensive line in the league. They had the least rushing yardage that they've had in franchise history. So the hope is that, especially with the addition of Jeremy Zuta at center, that they can get that run game going early. They can be productive with Bernard Pierce, and they can effectively save Ray Rice too if they need to.
I see they also picked up in their wide receiving core. They picked up Steve Smith from the Panthers, obviously being there for 13 seasons now. He's with the Ravens. But, to me it always seems since the exit of Anquan Bolden that they haven't quite, found what they're looking for in the deep threat. So is the kind of the tandem of Steve Smith and Jacoby Jones, is that really dynamic enough for Flacco to be able to stretch the field?
Yeah, I think that was a huge problem with Flacco last season is, the offensive line couldn't get the run game going, and so there was a lot of pressure on Flacco to carry that offense. At the same time, tight end Dennis Pitta, he missed most of the season with his hip injury. They didn't have an adequate replacement for Anquan Bolden. They had a lot of young, undrafted receivers out there with Torrey Smith, and the result, was not very good. And 8-8, I think they were lucky to kind of get to 8-8 last year. Now, Dennis Pitta's healthy. You've got a guy like Jacoby Jones who knows Kubiak's system. You have Steve Smith who can kind of take up that Anquan Bolden role where he's an older veteran. He's not the fastest guy, but he's got good hands. He's very intelligent, runs routes well, very physical. Then you have, of course, the deep threat in Torrey Smith. So I think you put all those things together, and Joe Flacco is definitely set up much better than he was last year.
Well, speaking of Joe Flacco being set up, I know that Gary Kubiak wasn't always the most successful head coach, but I've always respected him as a really great offensive mind. And, Joe Flacco has been known to be inconsistent at times. Do you think that with this new offense under Gary Kubiak that Flacco could be more consistent and perhaps maybe put better numbers than he's ever put up before?
I think that's quite possible because I think Gary Kubiak, his passing offenses especially are very conservative. They're about moving the chains, ball control, things like that, you can get the high completion passes, up that completion percentage, move the chains, get some touchdowns with these dynamic playmakers, get some of these guys, get Dennis Pitta getting some yards after the catch, things like that. But I think that, this could be a very efficient system for Joe Flacco to work with and get those completions up and get the ball out of his hands faster and make some plays.
Defensively, it seems like they're on track offensively with being able to stretch the field with Steve Smith and with Jacoby Jones and having a pretty solid running game. Defensively, they're kind of coming into the regular season a little beat up because Jimmy Smith had a chest contusion, Ladarius Webb had a lower back injury, and Asa Jackson had a sprained ankle. So they're kind of starting the season a little bit behind the 8 ball. Do they have enough depth defensively if these become nagging injuries throughout the season?
Yeah, that's the big concern, especially at cornerback. All 3 of those guys are expected to be ready for week 1. But the thing is that they've already had these significant dings that have, kept them out of the preseason, kept them out of practice. And even if one of them ends up being lost for any significant amount of time during the regular season for the Ravens, that can be real trouble. That's their one area of true concern right now is depth in the secondary.
We'll see. The Ravens seem like they've made some changes. Something offensively, they've given Flacco a little bit more to work with, but now it seems like they may have a couple setbacks when it comes to defense. I do agree with you that Ray Rice has probably become a bad distraction for them that they don't need, and it seems like it's permeating through the NFL as we speak. But overall, it seems like they've got a bit of balance, and I really think that Gary Kubiak might be one of the best things they did for that team to kind of give them some offensive, solidarity overall. A matchup that'll be the first week will be the Bengals against the Steelers. Now, the Steelers are that team when you look at them, you say, question mark, because, they were kind of, especially defensively, they were older, lost speed, little by little you saw, different players leaving like James Harrison, et cetera, et cetera. Defensively, where are the Steelers at?
Defensively, the Steelers are trying not only to get younger, but also to get faster and more aggressive. Last year they went 8-8. The year before that they went 8-8. And both of those years, you didn't really see that hallmark, aggressive, attacking, blitzing Dick LeBeau defense that you normally, equate with the Steelers. And a lot of that has to do just with a lack of speed. The addition of Ryan Shazier, the Steelers' first-round draft pick this year, is going to be huge for them. It's looking like he's going to start, which is something that rarely happens in the LeBeau defense, just because it's so complicated to learn. But Shazier is pretty familiar with it. They run a similar style defense at Ohio State, so he came in pretty prepared. He's extraordinarily fast. He's an inside linebacker. Dick LeBeau's, one of his signature blitzes is bringing pressure from the inside with those inside linebackers. He's a little bit questionable in coverage, but the speed that he can bring to the pass rush, I think, will really help the Steelers. In the secondary, they brought in Mike Mitchell, a free agent from the Carolina Panthers. He takes over for Ryan Clark. He's not entirely the fastest guy, but he's definitely faster than an aged veteran like Ryan Clark. He's got big play ability. Just those two additions to defense alone, I think, will bring a lot more aggressiveness, hard-hitting, Steelers-style defensive football.
That people are kind of used to seeing.
Right. So they're kind of banking on that, starting to turn things around. But it looks like it's going to be a multi-year reclamation project for the defense, ultimately.
We are talking NFL around the league, AFC North, with Andrea Hengst, who is an NFL analyst and lead writer for BleacherReport.com, who covers the AFC North. This is Sports Cypher. Stay tuned. We're going to talk some more Steelers and then the Cleveland Browns. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Sports Cypher. I am Maya Akai with Gabe Salgado in the house. We are talking NFL around the league. As you know, this kind of wraps up the entire edition, and we close it out with the AFC and NFC North. Talking AFC North, I have on the line Andrea Hengst, who is an NFL analyst and lead writer for the Bleacher Report that covers the AFC North. And we're talking the Steelers before we went to break. If you have questions, 773-591-1690 perplex. I know throughout Chicago there are Steeler fans. Oddly enough, many Chicagoans feel like Chicago and Pittsburgh have a similar style of kind of smash mouth football. I'm with you on this, Andrea. I think it's been missing for a while, either way. So obviously Pittsburgh is having their fair shares of issues, defensively, and they're trying to retool to get back to a more aggressive defense, which makes me wonder how much longer Palomalu is going to probably be a core part of that defense. What do you think?
I part of me wants to think that perhaps this might be his final season, but then when you look at the way that he played in 2013, and it looks like he might have a little bit even more time left. He had an entirely healthy 2013 season. He was one of the top safeties in the NFL. He looked healthy. He looked in great shape. He looked fast. He looked instinctive. He obviously has these trademark Palomalu plays where he, over pursues and kind of dives and misses a guy, and that's just going to happen because he basically is allowed to freelance on every play. I think it's really up to him. It's something I know that he's been thinking about over the past couple of years, but I know he's also not satisfied with the fact that the Steelers have been 8-8 the past two seasons. He was, visibly upset with his defensive teammates in the third preseason game. I think he's still got a fire left in there. I wouldn't be surprised if this was his last season, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he played another on top of it.
Well, one day, Troy Polamalu obviously is going to have to, whether it's retire or move on to another team, whatever the case may be. And just like you said earlier, and just like we've been talking about, Pittsburgh's defense is trying to get younger. How long do you think it will take for them to fully rebuild that defense with younger players, then have to teach them Dick LeBeau's system and get all that organized again?
That's the thing with LeBeau's system is that it does take more than one season, for the most part, for most rookies, and for the Steelers. So that's kind of the concern right now. But they do have some younger guys in the pipeline. Shamarko Thomas, a strong safety, he's in his second season, I believe. He's going to ultimately, one day be Palomalu's successor. They got Sean Spence back. He's a 2012 draft pick who had a very significant knee injury. They thought he might not ever be able to play again, and now he's on the field. So they've got a younger interior linebacker in Lawrence Timmons. So incrementally, they're getting younger and younger and younger. And they're doing it at least in, like, they're staggering positions. So at least once one guy comes up, another guy has at least had a year or two in that system. So eventually they'll reap the rewards of this. They'll maximize their draft picks on defense, and slowly they'll get younger. It's just such a long process for them that you kind of worry that the window is going to close at some point.
What about in regards to their running game? I mean, obviously, LeGarrette Blount had a decent 2010 with New England. He had like over 700 yards, which is not necessarily monumental for a running back. His best year was in 2010 when he was with Tampa Bay, where he was a 1,000-yard guy. So when you talk about the running game, which usually can be a staple of the Steelers' offense, how is that developing for them?
I think this is going to be a good year for the Steelers' run game. It was definitely not that good last year. It kind of came on in the second half of the season. They had some offensive line issues they ironed out. They kind of abandoned doing the outside zone blocking scheme. They're kind of bringing that back in this year with Mike Munchak as their new offensive line coach. I think that Le'Veon Bell is going to have a very good year. I think that now he has a year of experience. He's doing better in pass protection. He's got very soft hands, a very good receiver. So he can be an all-around back for the Steelers. But Garrett Blount, he's got more of that power, that north-south style running. Expect to see him in a lot of goal line situations. He's not much of a pass catcher, but I think they have a really good 1-2 punch with Bell and Blount. And then, of course, the rookie Tree Archer, you can split him out wide. You can, use him as a running back. He's small. He's fast. He's not going to be out there picking up blitzes. But he does add a speed component, which is something that, offensive coordinator Todd Haley has always been kind of fond of. Dexter McCluster, for example, when he was with Kansas City. So, you look at that run game, and it looks like something good is building there. Hopefully that'll take shape.
What can we make of the Steelers' passing game? Obviously, Ben Roethlisberger's getting a little older. He's been in the league for a decade now. How much longer do you think he can continue to lead this offense?
That's a really tough question, because you see a guy like Roethlisberger who's 32 years old, and you think, okay, well, this is a quarterback who's basically in his prime. But when you look at Ben Roethlisberger's style of playing quarterback, he runs around, he extends plays, he takes a lot of hits. He's had a lot of injuries in the past. Doesn't have a lot of 16-game seasons under his belt. And so it kind of makes you wonder about his durability. We've seen in the past couple of years his accuracy, especially his deep ball accuracy, on the decline. He's making plays with his feet, but he's not necessarily connecting with the receiver once he throws in the same way that he has in the past. So that's going to be a real question coming up. Todd Haley's offense, does really benefit Ben in the sense that it doesn't ask for a lot of that deep accuracy downfield passing. Again, it's more of a ball control, move the chain style passing offense. So that does benefit him. But the more hits he takes, the more injuries that add up, obviously the shorter his career becomes. And the Steelers right now don't have a backup plan in terms of a long-term successor, a long-term plan to replace Roethlisberger. So, it remains to be seen. I think the real key will be the new contract. He'll probably be getting an extension after this season. We'll see how much that's worth, how long it's for, what the guarantees are, and that'll give us a better idea of how long he'll be remaining in Pittsburgh.
In regards to their wide receiving core, I mean, obviously you've got Antonio Brown, but outside of that, what kind of depth do they have to spread the field? Is Darius Hayward-Bay, is he kind of someone that they should be looking at to grow? Marcus Whedon, kind of, where do you think their options are?
Well, with Darius Hayward-Bay, he has some upside. Obviously, he's very fast. He's an asset on special teams, which I think kept him on the roster. But, in a pinch, in certain situations, you got 4 receivers, 5 receivers even on the field. You can have him out there, spreading the field out wide, making sure that there's a defender trailing him. I think they're expecting big things out of Marcus Wheaton this year. He's finally been able to work with that offense. He missed a lot of time last year with a pinky injury. That seems to be healed up well enough. He's really coming on in that offense. So, hopefully he'll be able to, make up for the fact that, Emmanuel Sanders is no longer there. Heath Miller, last year, not a great year for him. But again, he came back from a multiple ligament tear in his knee, so obviously it was going to take him a while to get back up to speed. Now he's fully healthy. He's always been Ben Roethlisberger's kind of safety net. I think he's going to have a really good year. And ultimately, I think, the Steelers' passing offense is in really good shape.
All right. So last, maybe least, the Cleveland Browns, which the Bears managed to give their one preseason win to, but that's another story. So obviously we know that the big story in Cleveland outside of LeBron was the fact that they drafted Johnny Manziel. I mean, that came with so much flash. But at the end of the day, they decided that Brian Hoyer is going to be the starting quarterback when the season kind of rolls out. You know, the Browns, to me, have always had a good defense year in, year out. In fact, last year, I think that's probably how they got at least 4 of their wins, was the defense. And there were many games where they were right there in the mix, but they still managed to lose the game. And it seems like they made some interesting acquisitions. So they bring on Miles Austin from Dallas at wide receiving corps, but they cut Nate Burleson, which I thought was kind of interesting. And now Josh Gordon is suspended, and the run game is interesting because they let Trent Richardson go last year. What's going on with Cleveland's offense?
Well, to start with the Nate Burleson release, obviously it's kind of surprising only because there's not a lot of veteran depth, not a lot of depth in general there on that receiving corps. But Burleson was dealing with a hamstring issue throughout training camp. He was only able to appear in one preseason game, and in the NFL, sometimes the greatest ability is availability, and he just doesn't have it. So they're willing to roll forward with Miles Austin and Andrew Hawkins and Taylor Gabriel, who's kind of an unknown, who kind of came up during the preseason and has looked pretty sharp. And obviously tight end Jordan Cameron, who I think is going to be really the main target in this passing offense, regardless if it's Hoyer or Manziel, as the season rolls on. But I think that this team is going to be a run-first team. You've got Kyle Shanahan as the offensive coordinator. He comes from that Shanahan background of being able to really create productive rushing offenses. That's something that the Browns completely lacked last year. They came in 27th in rushing yards. They only had 4 rushing touchdowns on the season. They were willing to trade Trent Richardson in what I think is basically a steal, getting that first-round pick from the Colts. But then they didn't really have a backup plan otherwise. So I think this is going to be a heavily running offense this year. They're going to rely on that run game, rely on the defense. When they do pass the ball, the main target is going to be the tight end, Jordan Cameron, and basically hope that, the components they do have in place at receiver, like Miles Austin and Hawkins and Gabriel and so on, can, come on and at least, get the ball moving and be effective when they're called upon. But I don't think they're going to be called upon as much as, a more prolific passing offense.
2 questions for you on the Cleveland Browns front, at least offensively. 1, how long do you think it'll be before Johnny Manziel starts at quarterback? And 2, is Josh Gordon done in Cleveland because of his legal issues?
With the quarterback situation, I honestly would not be surprised if they, went back to the drawing board, took a look at things during week 4 when they are on the bye week. The Browns have a really brutal opening schedule. They first travel to Pittsburgh, then they take on the Saints, and then the Ravens before they go on bye, which makes sense that why they wouldn't want to basically throw Johnny Manziel to the Wolves in these first 3 weeks. So I think they'll look at how Hoyer performs in those 3 games, see what their win-loss record is. I mean, if they're 0-3 and Hoyer can't really move the ball and, things aren't looking as they had hoped out of Hoyer, then I think that would be a good time to go with Manziel. I wouldn't be surprised if it happened later in the season as well. He's still kind of mastering this offense and still learning how to be an NFL quarterback in an NFL system and balancing that with the way that he, plays, he's a Johnny football kind of improvisation style. So, I could see it happening in week 4. I could see it happening after that as well. In terms of Josh Gordon, the team has been very public that they're not going to release him, that they're going to give him as much support as they can in terms of what the CBA allows for a suspended player such as him. The thing is that Josh Gordon's future is in his own hands right now that he's suspended and can't really be involved with team activities. So it's going to be up to him to, notice what's happening with his life and see if football really is his true priority. Maybe the thing that can get him to stay, get focused again, turn things around, make better decisions. But as of now, the Browns haven't given up on him yet, no.
Okay. Andrea, thank you for checking into the show. Unfortunately, the Bears actually have no AFC North matchups. The only one they got was in the preseason against Cleveland. But either way, we always kind of, as the season rolls out and we have Monday Night Football and big matchups, I will be reaching out to you to definitely come back on the show. How can my listeners find you?
You can find me BleacherReport.com. I cover the AFC North there. You look up the Browns, Ravens, Bengals, Steelers. You'll find me there. You can also find me through the Bleacher Report Team Stream app. It conveniently allows you to search for your favorite writers and follow everything that they put out throughout the weeks. And I'm also available on Twitter at sball_Andrea. That's FBALL_Andrea.
Very good. Thank you for checking into the Sports Cypher. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having me.
That was Andrea Hengst. I always want to say Angst because it's just an H in front of that. She, like I said, she is an NFL analyst and lead writer for Bleacher Report, covers the AFC North. Good stuff, too. Check her out her site because I know she does some podcasting and she's pretty well-rounded. I mean, I read her stuff quite frequently.
Let's be honest. Aside from Johnny Football, there's really nothing that makes you want to watch the Cleveland Browns this year. And I think more than anything, people are probably going to watch to see how much he fails as opposed to how much he succeeds.
Well, he definitely has kind of that he's that kind of player that either you love him or you hate him. That's what it comes down to. Is there's those kind of players that because he comes with so much flash and fanfare, either you're right there in his corner or it annoys you to high heaven is how that works out.
Now you talking about Johnny like that. I mean, he's an exciting guy. He has an exciting lifestyle. There's a lot of people that love Johnny Football. I like Johnny Football.
Well, I think anybody with millions of dollars at their disposal has a, fun lifestyle.
Johnny Manziel he comes from money.
Exactly.
By no means.
Really?
Yes.
He could live without the NFL. His family did. Big business in the oil industry. There was actually an article on Deadspin about it last summer, I want to say in 2013, as he was getting ready for his last year at Texas A&M, and very interesting read. So really, he could do without the NFL. He just happens to be talented enough to play there, but his family could take care of him for the rest of his life if he wanted to.
Yeah,
that's a new one on me.
So I don't know if part of this very large personality comes from the fact that money. That's why when they were kind of connecting the dots on maybe he was illegally signing, autographs and getting paid for it, I said, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because he comes from not just money. He comes from big money.
I think somebody was just trying to stir the pot with that.
I kind of think so, too. I'm not saying that he wouldn't try to make a dollar, but why jeopardize everything when money is not really an issue for you?
Is he the Joe Namath of the hip-hop generation?
Well, let's see. Joe Namath, he's got a Super Bowl. He's in the Hall of Fame, so I don't know if I want to go that far yet, but here, well, Joe Namath was a little before my time. I mean, I've heard about his reputation, but I will say this though: my thing is, I don't care if he goes and gets drunk at the Bellagio the night before, as long as he shows up on game day and does his job, like Dennis Rodman used to do. Like he would go out and party, but he would come and grab you 20 rebounds and win you a game.
He was also
I'm fine with.
Did you find out down the road?
Well, yeah, down the road he found out, but he was there when the Bulls needed him.
Andrea made a very good point about given how rigorous the Browns' schedule is kicking off their season, it kind of would stand to reason that obviously they probably do believe that Manziel at least is potentially going to be the future at QB. They have struggled so often to find someone to really fill that role. I mean, look at
going all the way back to Tim Couch.
Yes. I mean, they have just, they had Colt McCoy, right?
McCoy, Jason Campbell, Brandon Whedon. I mean, just within the last
how long is the honeymoon going to last?
Do we even want to speculate on that?
LeBron is back in Cleveland. So even if the Browns tank and it doesn't go good for the Browns, their focus will be on the Cavaliers.
Yeah, they'll suffer through football season for the next 8 weeks, and then
NBA is right around the corner.
Exactly.
Come October, you're right. If you're in Cleveland, you're just waiting for October to roll around to really go to watch something that you love. So I mean, I think a lot of people, he's kind of like your new version of Tim Tebow. But here's the difference between Tim. No, I mean in regards to the persona in the media and how people are attracted, not talent-wise. But the difference is Tim Tebow was humble and would take the abuse. The difference with Johnny Manziel,
he talks back.
He'll talk back. He bite. So he'll be like, excuse me? He'll come back at you and he'll defend himself, which, whatever. It's his personality. So, I do agree with her that I don't think that Cleveland would roll him out. So while we thought the decision to start Hoyer was really about who was the best QB for the job, when you stop and you look at their schedule, it really might be more about, okay, he's really the better QB for the job, but we don't want to set him up for failure immediately or do trial by fire because these are some tough teams. So let him stand back and kind of watch as this unfolds and kind of learn from the sideline and go from there. So it'll be interesting. We are going to talk NFC North. And my Bear fans, I know you have something to say because, you know, that's Green Bay, Chicago, Minnesota, Detroit, another division that has potentially 3 teams that are going to be gunning for the division title. So 773-591-1690, or if social media is more of your thing, as we like to say here on WVON, let's get social, at the Sports Chica, at the Sports Cypher, and
at Gabe Salgado 82.
And you can always post your comments because I'm pretty sure you've got something to say. This is the Sports Cypher, Maya Kai, Gabe Salgado. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Sports Cypher, the best damn sports show on the radio. I'm Maya Kai, on with Gabe Salgado. We are now on the second part of the NFL Around the League, which is NFC North. That means your Chicago Bears. And then we're talking Green Bay, Minnesota, and Detroit. There you go. So to break it all down for us, we got on AJ Harris, who is a sports writer and analyst for BlueDudeSportsRadio.com. How you doing tonight, AJ?
Hey, what's up, Maya? What's up, Gabe? How y'all doing?
Doing good, doing good.
Good. So, you know, we've been chomping at the bit. You know, we saved the NFC North for last intentionally because we're 1 week before the NFL season kicks off. And, you know, obviously we got to see how everything unfolded, not just for the Bears, but for everybody in the NFC North. So I always say you kind of like to start from the bottom and work your way to the top. So for me, when I look at teams in the NFC North, if I'm going to have to pick who I have to put at the bottom, I'm actually going to go with the Vikings. Not to say they're bad, but I just think when I look at Chicago, Green Bay, and Detroit, I don't know if they have the depth, and I think they have a lot going on in transition. So let's talk about them offensively. Let's start with the quarterback situation because obviously Minnesota has kind of had issues with their quarterback situation for a while. Do they personally feel at this point that they have found a quarterback for them in either Castle or with the backup being Bridgewater that can really carry them through this NFL season?
Well, I think the future, obviously, is Bridgewater. Castle's a stopgap guy. We'll see. I don't think Castle will last past probably week 8. But remember, the key acquisition for the Vikings moving forward was, 1, getting Mike Zimmer, the defensive coordinator from the Bengals, as coach. But 2, the biggest one, was getting Norv Turner as offensive coordinator. And Norv, that's what he is. He's a really good offensive coordinator. I think he'll tailor make that offense around Castle and his strengths. And they have Adrian Peterson in the back, so anything can go. But I think they're going to be a lot better than what most people think. And I actually have the Lions last in the NFC North and the Vikings third.
Really? Okay, well, we'll get to them in a minute.
I can see that.
We'll get to that in a minute. And you're right. They have some issues. I'm going to say I just feel talent-wise that they should be able to make that leap. But you're right. There are some issues with the Lions. But let's keep with the Vikings right now. So, go ahead.
Okay, just 2 offensive questions for you really quick right off the bat. AJ, 1, how long do you think it'll be before Teddy Bridgewater starts? And 2, they cut Kane Coulter. They signed him undrafted at Northwestern, tried to make him into a receiver. What was it that kept him from making the roster?
Well, was he a receiver? Was he the wide receiver?
Yes.
From Northwestern?
Yeah,
their depth chart.
They tried to convert him from quarterback to wide receiver.
Okay, well, one thing, there's a transition right there. It's tough to play quarterback and then transition to anything other than a quarterback in the NFL. And then you transferring to the wide receiver position, you're going to have your top 4 wide receivers. Then that 5th and 6th guy on the depth chart at wide receiver are usually your gunners on special teams. And if you can't be a gunner on special teams or even play special teams, you leave yourself on the outside of the bubble. I mean, there's most guys who can't fill those roles on the depth chart as far as playing offense or defense. That third line on the depth chart, maybe 4th, is filled for special teams. And I think probably what it came down to was there a need for him on special teams, or could he play special teams? And that probably left him on the bubble.
I mean, we know everything about Minnesota's offense is Adrian Peterson, that's what it's designed around. But when you look at their wide receiving core, obviously they've got Greg Jennings, but what do they have to stretch the field and give a deep threat?
I think it's a breakout year. I've got probably my comeback player of the year or even second-year receiver, UT Vols, Cordarrelle Patterson is going to break out real big. I think he's a star in the making. Outside of Adrian Peterson on both sides of the ball, he's their best football player.
Wow.
I think Patterson. Here's the problem looking at the Vikings though. You get past Jennings and Patterson. Who's your third guy?
Exactly.
Jarius Wright or Adam Thielen? That's where the problem lies. Same thing with Detroit. You have Megatron, and opposite of Megatron, they get Golden Tate from Seattle. Who's the third guy? The third guy is going to be an issue. The third guy, Kevin Ogletree or Jeremy Ross. That third guy makes a huge difference in the slot because he takes pressure not only off your number one, he takes pressure off your number two. That's where Minnesota and Detroit struggle finding that third receiver. One of those guys are going to have to step up.
Defensively, obviously, you see the exit of Jared Allen, who comes to Chicago. So apparently they decided to part ways because they feel they now have a player ready to fill his shoes, or was it just did they feel he had a lack of production, which I didn't see? I felt he performed well last year. So defensively, where are they at, considering what they gave up on the pass rush with Jared Allen?
Well, I think Jared, I think he'd be better suited for spot duty myself. I mean, they're going to play him obviously for 3 downs, but I was under the impression when they got him, and I'm still thinking. I'm under the assumption that he will come in on 3rd downs. I mean, he'll play every down, but I think he's better suited right now with his age and all that mileage as a specialty, as a 3rd and distance sack guy. Lamar Houston, though, was a huge upgrade on the opposite side. And then also we'll see what they get out of Dallas Cowboys cast off Jay Ratliff. I think the Bears' defensive line can be suitable enough to keep those backers free to make plays. The biggest question mark, though, is Shea McClellan, that 2012 number 1. Now, he was an outside linebacker. Now they're converting him into the stand.
Okay, so let's...
Can he make that? Go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, we'll kind of chop up the Bears, but I kind of want to move through this like team by team. So we get Jared Allen, who we can use, obviously, pass rusher, like you said, into the slots. But with Minnesota giving him up defensively, what do they have to kind of fill that void for them and create the pass rush? Have they been grooming somebody to kind of take that spot?
Yes, I think Brian Robeson, they paid him last year, and Everson Griffin from SC. I think they'll be fine. They get rid of Allen, but they have an influx of youth. And then you have the second-year defensive tackle, their top pick last year, Sharif Floyd. And they get, last year, a free agency, Linval Joseph from the Giants. So I think their front is really good. And remember, their head coach, Zimmer, he's a really good defensive mind. And I think he'll have those guys flying around. And, of course, when you have a front as athletic as they are and as young, they'll go out and get Anthony Barr, outside linebacker from UCLA, as the top pick in the 2014 draft. And he's going to be flying around making plays. And then you got my man from Iowa, Chad Greenway, who I think one of the best he's the most underrated backer in the league. So, I mean, they'll be all right. That front's a lot better on paper. If you look at them, their front, if you take Ndamukong Suh off the Lions front, the Vikings front might even be better than the Bears front. Really.
Now, what do you expect, Corey Wooten, how do you think he'll pitch into the Vikings this year?
Wooten, is he on the PUP list right now, or?
No, he's active. He's healthy for that.
I believe he's active. Yeah, they signed him after the Bears let him go in the offseason.
Mm-hmm. So from everything I've read on,
yeah, he'll back up Robeson. Like I said, you can never have enough good defensive linemen, especially on the depth chart. I think Wooten he'll get a lot of looks, a lot of snaps behind Robeson, and they'll move him in and out. Zimmer, like I said, Zimmer gets the most production out of his players. He did it in Cincinnati for years. He did it in Dallas for years. I think it was a nice pickup for them. Like I said, they have a nice influx of youth in Minnesota. They're doing it the right way. And to be a solid NFL team when you're at the bottom trying to come up, you build in the interior. And I like what the Vikings are doing. They're building from the interior out. And that defensive front is looking really good. It really is.
All right, so let's switch gears and talk the Detroit Lions, who definitely have had their fair share of shakeup in the offseason. You've got the exit, obviously, of Burleson. You got a coaching change. So a lot of things, at least in the Detroit culture, is going to be changing this season. What do you think is going to be the biggest impact for Stafford? I mean, obviously, he still has, Calvin Johnson. He's got his go-to guy. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, what does he have in regards to depth overall offensively?
I think the best thing for staff right now, and even Megatron, is a healthy Reggie Bush and a healthy and very underrated Joy Bell, the other running back. I think what Caldwell would do, their new coach, Jim Caldwell from the Colts, and then he was offensive coordinator for the Ravens last year. I think what he'll do is he'll take a lot of pressure, hopefully off staff, to keep him out of third and distance, and have Reggie Bush and Joy Bell first and second down, a lot of play action, and a lot of swing routes out of the backfield. And I think that'll help Staff. One thing Stafford is, he relies on his physical ability sometimes too much, and he gets in trouble when he's rushed in the pocket, or when he has to move around and improvise a little bit. He gets careless with his throws, like he'll even drop down sidearm. And I think maybe having Coach Peyton Manning all them years, I think Caldwell can maybe get Staff out of that. But moving forward, really, I think the running back will help Staff more than anything.
Well, Reggie Bush definitely had a quite a good comeback year last year with the Lions. And you're right. I do believe that a strong running game, something that Detroit had been looking for prior to him coming there, is definitely something that's going to help them to expand, because they still have a decent middle of the field game with tight end Brandon Pettigrew. Wide receiving, obviously, like you said, they pick up Golden Tate, which kind of bumps Ogletree, is second behind him. So overall, you're right. It seems like they have a good defensive weapon. So let's talk about them defensively.
And let me hold up.
Go ahead.
And Maya, hold up. Let me add this. After you get past Jumbotron, Brandon Pettigrew, Joseph Fourier, all he does is score touchdowns, and then they get their first pick of the 2014 draft, the best tight end on the board, Eric Ebron. So now, not only do you have the running backs doing what they're supposed to be doing, I think Caldwell will also utilize those three tight ends in formations, and he'll even put Ebron, I think, in the slot, because he's athletic enough to be that Jimmy Graham or Vernon Davis. You can put him in the slot and move him around. So they've got some weapons. They have some weapons outside of Megatron and Tate.
Okay, we're talking NFC North with A.J. Harris, who is a sports writer and analyst for BlueDewSportsTalk.com. So let's go to the other side of the ball and talk about Detroit's defense, which obviously when you talk about having likes of, Zeke Ansah, Nick Fairley, and Ndamukong Suh, there's that expectation that this should be the one part of the team where there shouldn't be a hiccup. Anything defensively that's changed for them? Have they gotten better? Not that they were bad, but have they made any improvements to their defense?
Well, Jason Jones was a nice pickup from the Seattle Seahawks, but the problem is Nick Fairley. He's had weight issues. They've been on him. As we're talking right now, he's second on the depth chart behind C.J. Mosley. And if Fairley doesn't get his weight down, he cannot play snap after snap. I think that's a huge void in the Lions front. If Fairley can get his weight down, sometime, in the next, like the first 4 games of the season, if he can get down to a good playing shape, they can be dominant. But if Fairley's not in there a lot, they're going to have to rely more on Suh, and then the 2013 top pick, Ziggy Ansah, he has to come around and make plays as well. I like Detroit, but it's just like watching the Atlanta Braves in baseball. They're always right there, but they never turn that corner. And I just don't see them turning that corner. They're mix and match on defense. They plugged in some vets, but I just don't see it right now.
How is their secondary? Obviously, we've got Mathis back there. You've got Slay and Quinn. But overall, is there good strength in their secondary?
Their secondary, I think, is it's about like it was last year. They lose Lou Downs to the Dolphins. They pick up James Diedibo from the Ravens. Glover Quinn is decent. Darius Slay, the corner, the second-round pick from 2013, is Rasheem Mathis, the vet from the Jags all them years, Pro Bowler, perennial Pro Bowler. He's probably their best corner. A little long in the tooth, but after that, though, I'm concerned about their depth. Their depth is really, really bad on the second line of their secondary. And those 4 I just mentioned, they're going to have to play and play well. But like most secondaries in the NFL, it's predicated on how your front seven is playing. And they've got some issues up front there with the Fairley, so we'll see how they hold up. But like I said right now, I just don't see it on paper right now. I just don't see them doing anything going towards that 9-7, 10-6. I think they're more 8-8, 7-9, maybe even 6-10.
Okay. So the team in Chicago that we frequently talk about as being the nemesis would be the Green Bay Packers. So we all know this season starts with a healthy Aaron Rodgers, which is key. So before we jump into talking Green Bay, which is going to definitely stretch the conversation, we're going to take a quick NBC News break. This is the Sports Cypher, Maya Kai, Gabe Salgado. We'll be right back.
Live from the Xfinity Studios at WVON. You're listening to Chicago's legendary urban radio station, celebrating 50 years of informing, entertaining, and educating Chicago. And now, the nation on iHeartRadio. We are the talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON. And now, the Sports Cypher Sports Update.
It's time for your Sunday Sports Update. I'm Gabe Salgado. Follow me on Twitter at Gabe Salgado82. We're going to start things with baseball here. The White Sox held their own against the division-leading Detroit Tigers with a 6-2 victory today. The Southsiders split the weekend series at 2 games apiece. They're off tomorrow, but they do play Minnesota on Tuesday. It's a road game, actually, and before the game, they traded designated hitter Adam Dunn to Oakland and outfielder Alejandro De Aza to the Baltimore Orioles in exchange for minor leaguers, so that's some pretty big news there. As for the Cubs, they also settled for a weekend split after losing 9-6 to the Cardinals in St. Louis today. The Northsiders have lost 2 straight after taking the first 2 games in that series. And the Bears are almost done setting their regular season roster. They made final cuts this weekend. Some of the big names that were let go were rookie running back Jordan Lynch, cornerback Kelvin Hayden, offensive lineman Eben Britton, and rookie linebacker Dede Lattimore. They're also looking for a new long snapper, apparently, as Brendan Hartson was let go earlier today. And we're going to get a little more in depth into the Bears conversation just coming up here. And college football kicked off the 2014 season this week. Most of the local teams did quite well. Northern Illinois dispatched Presbyterian 55-3. Notre Dame rolled over Rice 48-17. Illinois pushed past Youngstown State 28-17. Northwestern, unfortunately, was the only loser as California went to their house and walked out of Evanston with a 31-24 victory. And at 10:40, we're going to get a little more in depth into the college football conversation as well. That is your Sunday Sports Update. I'm Gabe Salgado.
Once again, it's on.
1690 WVON.
Yes. Welcome back to the Sports Cypher. I am Maya Kai, and of course, Gabe Salgado is co-hosting with me. Just gave us that fabulous update. We are in full swing talking NFL around the league. We wrap it up as we talk NFC North, and of course, we will get to your Chicago Bears. Questions, comments, 773-591-1690, or feel free to get social with the show at the Sports Chica, at the Sports Cypher, and at Gabe Salgado82 to post your comments or questions, and we'll obviously try to integrate that into the show. Talking NFC North with me is AJ Harris, who's a sports writer and analyst for BlueDudeSportsRadio.com. All right, AJ, are you ready to go back?
Yes.
All right, so.
Let it rip.
All right, we're talking Green Bay, which I said we'd work our way to the top. So it's not that I'm necessarily saying that I feel that the Bears are the top, but, we're going to say them for last because that's Chicago's team.
Right, okay.
So, we look at Green Bay and we look at them on the offensive side of the ball. They come back as a healthy team, obviously having, Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb in their receiving core. They've got a good tight end and Quarles, a good fullback in John Kuhn, and obviously Eddie Lacy with a very strong running game. And then here comes Aaron Rodgers back healthy. Anything offensively you feel that they're missing at this point? Or is it just Green Bay is, they're ready to go for the season?
Well, I think Green Bay and Seattle, to me, are the 2 top teams in the NFC. If there's a glaring question mark I have is their third receiver, Jared Boykin. Outside of that, you look at them, like you said, Maya, Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, Andrew Quarles is a pretty good tight end. John Kuhn is the fullback, and then the 2-headed monster led by Eddie Lacy with James Starks behind him. Mm-hmm. Only thing that would derail the Green Bay Packers right now is losing one of those offensive linemen. That would be huge. Outside of that, they're ready to go. I mean, they're to me, and then I'm reading across the board. A lot of analysts are selecting the Packers in Seattle to get out the NFC, and we'll see. But with Aaron Rodgers healthy, and all those weapons he has, and maybe the best running game he's had since he's been in Green Bay, they're ready. They're ready to roll.
I'll argue that tandem of Lacy and Starks is pretty darn good. And when you put John Kuhn kind of in that fullback position, you just can't beat it. I mean, literally, Aaron Rodgers has the ability to stretch the field. He has a lot of options, and it's all contingent, obviously, on them being healthy. But I also feel the one thing that Green Bay has done really well over the years is create depth so that when they do have injuries at certain positions, they do have the ability to kind of roll someone in that you know nothing about, but yet they step into that role and they're able to kind of keep things going. The only time they may have that deficiency you talk about at the quarterback position, which is very dynamic. And I think part of bringing Matt Flynn into the fold is, you know, Mark McCarthy decided, let's go back and get somebody who really understands our system and who thrived in it enough where he felt like he had a chance when he went to Seattle, obviously, to be their starting quarterback, and we saw how that worked out. So, you know, Matt Flynn, after did he also take a trip down to the Raiders, if I remember, had no trouble returning back to Green Bay. So offensively, you're right, they're pretty well balanced, and it's the team. And if you're a Bears fan, you got to keep this in perspective. It's a team that isn't having to fill themselves out. They understand exactly what they do, and they have a balance and understanding, and there's synchronicity among them because this is a team. This is an offense that's been working together for a while when it's all said and done.
Yes.
And that's a plus.
Yes.
But, Go ahead. No. I was like, yeah, I was agreeing.
Oh, then okay. And then you couple all that with what they have at the top. Ted Thompson's a top 3 GM in the league, and like you said, he's built that depth chart to where one man goes down, the next man up, and they have quality depth. And only Seattle rivals them on the depth chart. They have so much quality depth, even on defense now. They're super solid, and like I said, the Bears. We'll get to them in a second, but they're going to have a tough time dealing with them because they're so balanced offensively and defensively. They're really balanced.
So let's talk defensively. So obviously they make the acquisition of Julius Peppers from the Bears, which there was a lot of mixed emotions. Some people had no issue with Peppers leaving Chicago because his production had really declined, and he was often missing a lot last season in situations where he should have been present. Don't be shocked. I keep telling people that, you know, starting out the year in Green Bay, if he seems intense and he's the Julius Peppers of old that you remember coming to Chicago from Carolina, because unfortunately that tends to be his MO. He's a lot of electricity when he first comes to a team, and then he just gradually fades to black. So Bears fans shouldn't get too annoyed and feel like it was a bad trade because he just wasn't, you know, he had restructured his contract with the Bears several times. I think he just felt like he was at the end of the road, and I think a lot of his performance reflected that type of attitude. But I think part of what was an issue for Green Bay last year defensively was they really had issues. I mean, they had obviously Clay Matthews wasn't 100%. A.J. Hawk had issues, you know, so you're looking at a team that finally in the offseason got healthy. How's their secondary look? We know you got Sam Shields, but on the opposite side of left corner, how does Williams look?
They have the best secondary in the division. And remember this, their top pick, Clinton Dix from Alabama, he's behind Micah Hyde right now at free safety. He's not even starting. He can't even get into that first unit. And back to what you said about Peppers, I think Peppers will be a little bit rejuvenated because, you know, sometimes a change of scenery is good, and I think for both parties it was a good split. But now he's moving to a 3-4. Now he doesn't have his hand in the ground. Now he's standing up and he's playing in space. And maybe I think that'll get Peppers moving. He's an outside linebacker now, moving to that Don Capers 3-4 system. So you'll see a different Peppers. The Peppers playing in space a lot. Obviously on third down, they're going to bring him. But I think you'll see somewhat a little bit better. And like you said, it was a change of scenery that helped him out. But back to the secondary, Tramon Williams and Sam Shields are two of the, you know, top 3 duos at corners in the league. And Morgan Burnett is a super solid, strong safety. I mean, they're going to be tough. And Clinton Dix, he'll get his reps. Because when they go nickel, they'll bring him in and he'll play that third safety, and they'll bring one of them safeties down in the box.
Well, I'll tell you
the Packers.
I'll tell you what, I am fully looking forward to. There's always a lot of that drama that comes with it's Green Bay, it's Chicago. The matchup is legendary. It's been around for obviously, you know, just years. And so it's 2 big games that we do enjoy. But I can finally say, in looking at their secondary with Williams, who has been very impressive, as well as Sam Shields, I can't wait for that matchup against, you know, Jeffrey and Marshall, and now, you know, you're going to be throwing in at Santonio Holmes, and then, you know, Martellus. But there's so much to put in the mix. You know, this is the first time you'll look at the Bears offense versus Green Bay's defense and say, I mean, and I'm not giving any discredit to Green Bay's offense at all, but I'm just saying that'll be a matchup that's going to be worth watching.
Yes, and the Bears are super explosive on offense, and adding Santonio, And what he looked like on the fourth preseason game, I was like, wow.
Like he didn't miss a beat, right? That's how he looked.
Really explosive, yes. He looked really good. And I'm thinking, like, they had him to, like you say, Bennett, Marshall, and Jeffrey. That matchup is going to be really good to see that Bears offense versus that Packers D.
Two questions about Julius Peppers, and I'm really curious to get your thoughts on it. One, do you think that he still has enough in the tank to complement somebody like Clay Matthews, especially now that B.J. Raji's out for the year? And two, do you think Green Bay overpaid for him?
Well, I think what Green Bay and Mike McCarthy and Ted Thompson and all them are doing, I think he has a little bit left. I really do. I think he has a season or two left. And then the second part of that question, schematically speaking, I think they're athletic. They're front. Raji's a huge loss, but I think Peppers, if they get in trouble on that line, they can move Peppers down onto that line on that defensive end, and maybe move Nick Perry into that right outside linebacker spot right behind Peppers. They're mixed or matched, but I think Peppers is a nice pickup for them. And right now the Packers are in it for a championship right now. They cannot wait. So I think they went after Peppers thinking maybe he was that last piece opposite of Matthews to get it going again.
Well, we will see that match of the first. Green Bay will come to Chicago week 4, September 28th. So it's still good weather outside. So that should be a good game. And then obviously Chicago goes up to Green Bay week 10, November 9th.
My birthday.
So I think this is the first time for me in a long time that I'm going to enjoy that matchup, just not because it's Green Bay, but how both of these teams have really developed and what they've done in their offseason, especially for the Bears. And with that being said, let's go ahead and shift gears and talk your Chicago Bears. This would be a great time for questions, 773-591-1690, or if social media is more of your comfort zone, at the Sports Cypher, at the Sports Chica, and
at Gabe Salgado 82.
And hey, AJ, what's your Twitter handle?
At Blue Dude Sports with an S. At Blue Dude Sports.
Let me ask you a quick question. What is the Blue Dude Sports thing? What does that?
Well,
what does that mean?
Blue Dude derives from, that was a name I used back at school at Alabama A&M when I was on an urban radio station in the morning. It was something that came up from, because I'm a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated.
Ah, okay.
So so that's kind of where it derived from. And I thought I'd run with it again when I started my blog back in 2010. So I mean it fits. It fits kind of what I do. I'm all around. I'm covering all the sports. So that's where it comes from.
All right, that it does. You do cover everything. So let's talk some Bears. So obviously, let's just go ahead and kind of start from working offensively to the top to the bottom. So Jay Cutler's back. Question. Now, I do feel this is legitimate. Obviously, the Bears made the investment with him in a contract extension, but I really feel in order for people to not scrutinize Cutler any further, this really needs to be the season that, one, he needs to stay healthy, and two, he needs to put up big numbers, because the expectation, and I frequently say this, that you can put up big numbers when you have the likes of Trestman as your coach. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah, I fully agree with it. Here's the thing with Cut, and even Trestman. Don't get away from number 22. I think they throw, they put the ball in Jay's hands sometimes too much with Marshall and Jeffrey on the outside. I think if they can utilize Matt Forte even more, when things are going good, give him the ball, and that they have a solid offensive line. I love the right side of that line with the second-year guys, Kyle Long and Jordan Mills.
Yeah,
I think if they run the ball and use Forte in that fashion, I think they could be even more efficient. Not so much more explosive, but more efficient. And they're a top 5 offense in the NFL right now. They're top 5, and you add like Antonio to that mix, they're definitely top 5.
Well, speaking of the running backs, you talk about Matt Forte, but it looks like Kadeem Carey's probably going to get his good share of reps too. He's probably going to be in the backup to Forte. What do you expect that he'll pitch in? What do you think that he'll pitch in as far as his playing time goes this year?
I think he'll be a spot guy, but I also think they're going to have a little package for him, like my Pittsburgh Steelers have for their rookie Dree Archer, little gadget back. I think they'll put him in third down. He can spell Forte. He's a small guy, 5'9", but he's packed. He's like 200-plus pounds. You can run in between the tackles, outside the tackles to the boundary. I think they'll have a nice package for him, and then he'll need to change a pace back because he's small and he's explosive. Yeah, I mean, like I said, the Bears, if they can run the ball and get ahead of teams and run the ball, eat some of that clock, they don't have to worry about if the defense is going to stop or when they're going to stop someone. They have to be smart and take the ball sometimes out of Cutler's hands to be more efficient by running through 22. But yeah, Kadeem Carey's a nice pickup for them. He's a nice change, especially off of Forte, a different back.
He is. His style of running is definitely, to me, it's that kind of good A-B gap runner that's been missing for a while because you don't really get that kind of running style from Forte. So I think Carey is a good complement of that. And the thing about this Bear season, which will be very interesting at the same time dynamic, is because you have so much talent on offense, which is taken a couple years to get to this point. You're right. There may be that small tendency to veer away from Forte, but everybody has to not forget that even though the NFL has turned into that pass-first league, we all know establishing the run is so instrumental in the pass even working. So with you having the ability to have the likes of, Carey along with Forte, I think he'll get the touches, but the temptation to spread the field is going to be there. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and when you're up in these games and you can run the ball efficiently and move the chains, you keep the other side of the ball off the field. And I think if the Bears can utilize that, they'll help the defense a lot. And they're going to be tough. They're going to be a tough out because they're so explosive on offense. They're going to score points. They're going to score a lot of points.
Now, a quick question. You did briefly touch on the Bears defense at the beginning of the segment. You talked about Shane McClellan. What do you think? What do you think it's going to take developmental-wise for John Bostic and Shane McClellan to become, the type of linebackers that the Bears will need to be successful on defense this year?
Well, I still think they're learning from one of the best. They're learning from 55, which is a huge plus, and DJ Williams, who's a really good player if he could stay healthy. They're top picks. When they were drafted, DJ was a first rounder, but I think Bostic and Green, I still think they're in spot duty. They can be really good. I still think they're a year away. McClellan has to be now. When you're a first rounder in this league, you only get so many shots. This is his third year. And what they say in the NFL, your third year, the lights come on. If the lights don't come on, they're shuffling, then you're probably going to be packing. So, this is a big, huge year for McClellan. He's in a new role. Maybe that'll help him. But we'll see. Christian Jones, the kid from Florida State. I watched him a lot last year.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought, because Christian Jones is quite the favorite of someone here. The Sports Cypher, Maya Kai, Gabe Salgado, along with AJ Harris, talking Bears. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Talk radio that makes you think. You're listening to the Talk of Chicago and the voice of the nation. 1690 WVON.
Welcome back to the Sports Cypher. I'm Maya Kai, the Sports Chica, on with Gabe Salgado. And we are talking NFC North, specifically your Chicago Bears, as we prepare for kickoff of the NFL season. Are you ready for some football? Because September 7th is right around the corner, and their first matchup will be the Bills. And to help us see what the Bears have done in the offseason, what cuts they've made to get down to their 53-man roster, we have on the line AJ Harris, who is an NFL analyst and writer for BlueDewSports.com, who's kind of been breaking things down for what the Bears have done thus far. So, obviously, we were talking the offensive side of the ball, AJ, and there's a lot of power pack there. There's no doubt about it, and there's options. Obviously, the key thing is a healthy Jay Cutler, because without a healthy Jay Cutler, we saw last year that all this talent you see on offense tend to go for naught. Because unlike last year, where you had a backup quarterback in Josh McCown who surprised many and was able to kind of keep the ship moving forward, what you don't have. I'm not going to say that Clausen isn't good enough, but I don't have that same faith if Cutler can't stay healthy.
Yeah, I'll say it for you. No, Clausen ain't good enough. If they lose Cutler, they're done. Don't put it out there. Ain't no use of just beating around the bush. If Jay Cutler's not healthy and they go to Jimmy Clausen, it is donezo.
You said it's
really
done. So no, I'm with you on that, because and the thing about this that is a little sad is because the one effort that you saw is offensively there's good depth on the team, except for at the quarterback spot. Now, I'll be honest. There's not many teams that you can honestly look around the NFL and look at their backups and say you feel they're extremely confident. And if that starter, if Drew Brees leaves, whoever his backup is, you don't feel like they're going to be that efficient.
His backup is Josh McCown's brother, by the way.
Oh, see, I didn't even know that. But I'm just saying, you know that if you lose your go-to guy, your starting quarterback. If Aaron Rodgers goes out, Matt Flynn may be able to float that ship because he's familiar and had success in that system. But it isn't a unique problem to have in the NFL that your backups just can't do what your starters do. So I will say offensively, to me, what might be that Achilles heel, honestly, might be if they can't keep their QB healthy. To me, that becomes the Achilles heel. Let's talk about defensively because everybody knew that this was the area that needed the most work coming into this season. And I have to say that obviously, you're going to get a healthy Jay Ratliff at defensive tackle this year. Obviously when he came from the Cowboys, he had cleared obviously to come play, but you knew you weren't getting a healthy Ratliff. So this season you're getting a healthy Ratliff. Obviously they pick up the like of Houston, which was good. A lot of different dynamics, but is it enough, do you feel, for them to really make an impact on?
It just depends how that front four meshes and how they play. On paper, it looks good, and I think they've made enough moves to get maybe back to, above average or at least average enough to, to get to that 10-11 win mark. What I'm really concerned about, really not so much the front four or even the backers. Jennings and Peanut Tillman, solid, super solid. They rival Tramon Williams and the other Packers corner. I'm worried about their safeties.
Safeties. Okay, I hear you on that. Now, see, we're a little reversed on this, AJ, because I know a lot of people have a love affair with Charles Tillman, and I do think he's a quality cornerback. But in one-on-one situations, he tends to get burned more than people want to accept. Now, when you obviously give him good safety coverage, then he's a lot more efficient to me. But I was actually kind of impressed a little bit with what I saw out of Ryan Monday during the preseason. No?
Well, we had Monday. Yeah, we had Monday at the. He was playing in the Steelers his first 2-3 years in the league. He's a serviceable, strong safety. He's a hitter. I think he's a liability in coverage. I think the deep third, playing on that deep third, gives him some issues. But back to what your point is, Tillman's more of a run support corner and a bump and run corner, and he gambles a lot. Mm-hmm. I mean, he gambles enough to where, like you said, if he cannot get his hands on you, you can get by him a lot. And like I said, that back end's going to be predicated on how Ryan Monday and Danny McCray, the free safety, play. But I like the rookie. I like the kid Kyle Fuller. I like him a lot.
Yes,
I thought he
Fuller
was the
very impressive.
best. I thought he was the second best DB on the board, opposite of the Cincinnati Bengals corner from Michigan State. I thought Fuller and him were the two best corners on the board. Yeah, Darquez Denard. Him and Fuller were the two best corners. Fuller's going to play that slot. He'll be a nickel. But it'll be on those safeties. Trust me on that. And let me ask you a question, since you guys are Bears heads. Why is 47 still on the team?
Yeah, I'm asking.
There was a lot of deep breath behind it. It was a lot of deep breath.
I'm asking a lot of questions about that defense. I mean, take a look at they let go both Isaiah Fry and Kelvin Hayden. So, I mean, unless the coaching staff knows something that we don't, I'm scratching my head on a lot of those decisions too.
I'm not feeling like when you talk about him, don't expect to see a whole lot of him on the field. Yes, it does make no sense that he's still there. But let me just say this, and I'm not saying this even remotely to give him an excuse for why he underperformed. Chris Conte, yes, he got do-si-doed a lot last season. He really did on the field. But in his defense, he had some company on a lot of bad coverage that probably put more responsibility on his limited talent base that should have happened.
Hold on, Maya. Who was worse, Major Wright or Chris Conte?
Major Wrong or Chris Conte?
Major Wrong.
They were running neck and neck. I mean, they could have been like, it just wasn't a good match in that backfield, and it really exposed how he really shouldn't still probably. But Brock Vereen, I do believe, who I was very impressed with throughout the preseason. I expect to see a heck of a lot more of him than I do of Conte.
I will say this. I think that, just like you, I think that both Wright and Conte were equally bad. It's just that Conte got most of the attention.
Right. I'm going to say something, and people were getting mad. People noticed Conte because he was white. And they was like, look at that white boy out there getting spun around. And that's why he got holy hell. Because they're like, look, he out there, there's got to be somebody on the practice squad that can do better.
My words, not mine.
I'll call it like it is. Had that Major Wright was out there looking bad and nobody talked about him like a dog like that. But Chris Conte, he really got talked about. And I'm telling you, I'm being honest. I'm playing a race card. He was white.
He deleted his Twitter account because people were sending him threats for every bad play that he made.
I know. And he had some good company and bad plays. He did.
But I'll say this. In Major Wright's defense, and there's a guy out in San Francisco, Eric Reed. Hold on. When they play in college, when they evaluate these guys, some of these safeties are made by the corners they play with. Now, Major Wright had Joe Hayden, left corner, Janoris Jenkins on the right before he got kicked out of school. Look, Eric Reed had the Honey Badger, Mo Claiborne, and Patrick Peterson at LSU. Then you look at them in the pros, they don't get it. And when they evaluate these guys, I think they miss because they don't evaluate them for the, to the players they're playing around or the players that are the corners when they're safety, the secondary. And I think when they miss on guys all the time. I thought Major Wright was a bust when they drafted him. I thought he was terrible.
And didn't he also get cut from Tampa Bay? I mean, so he's not. The Bears have struggled in the backfield for quite some time. Remember when they brought in Brandon Merriweather from, the Patriots and that didn't pan out? They've just really struggled trying to find consistency in that secondary core. And I'll be honest, that's generally for me right now where I'm still feeling a little uncomfortable, even though I like what I saw out of Monday. It still doesn't make me feel like that back in the backfield is maybe as solid as it needs to be.
Let's not forget the failed Adam Archuleta experiment. That was painful to watch. I was
just not going to bring that up. I mean, it's just they've struggled.
I think Chris Conte is Adam Archuleta. Adam Archuleta is playing under Chris Conte's name.
You know what? That's wrong, AJ. That's wrong. All right, so tell me, what's your prediction for the Bears? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I got to ask you this really quickly. So you mentioned Christian Jones before we went to the break, and my technical producer, Malcolm Rockhold, is a huge Christian Jones supporter. I mean, obviously practice squad, but do you think that he'll have ability to get on the field? Can he take, one of those positions and sneak up and become a starter?
Look, Christian Jones, I'm going to tell you a story quick on him at Florida State. He played 5 positions at Florida State. He started all 4 years. He started outside, inside. He even started rushing. He even played some safety.
Wow.
He's an athletic kid. I've always said this about kids. If you're 6'4", 225, you can play anywhere. You can play basketball, you can play football, you can play baseball. The kid's an athletic freak. I think a lot of teams missed on him because of the Florida State kids he was playing with, all those kids that got drafted.
Right.
I think he'll eventually push McClellan right out of a job. You heard it from me first.
I don't think that's impossible because, they're putting Shea McClellan into a new role, which he's not really thriving at, by the way.
Our producers are big believers of that.
People behind the glass are over there cheering, he's got his own private fan session.
I will say this about Christian Jones. I was surprised initially that he was undrafted. I know he had the failed drug test or whatever that was coming out of college, but he really is a solid player, and I thought that it was a steal for the Bears to be able to get him.
Understand, this is what Phil Emery does so well. He knows how to dig into the draft and how to really assess talent. So, there's a high probability with that type of, athleticism that he has and flexibility. And you're right. If Shea McClellan does not kind of right the ship quickly, he's probably standing right there as that person who can step in for him. And actually, that might be an upgrade, to tell you the truth. All right, AJ, thank you for checking into the show. Where can my listeners find you?
They can find me at BlueDudeSportsTalk.com, and then on Twitter at BlueDudeSports, and then on LinkedIn and Google Plus at AJ Harris, the sports blogger.
All right, good to have you on. I will definitely have you back soon. Appreciate you checking in to talk Bears and NFC North. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Maya.
All right, have a good
night, Gabe.
All right, guys. Take care.
All right, for us, that officially means for these last 4 weeks, we have gone around the NFL and we have highlighted every team in regards to changes they made in the offseason, how they drafted, and we definitely covered every team that the Bears will see in their season. We kind of now have a snapshot of what to anticipate. So, Gabe, you've gotten through preseason. I know you've really struggled with this commitment thing. I know you do. Are you willing to give me a record yet? I'm
going to go ahead and say I'm going to give you a slim 10-6.
Okay. I mean, we're not not that far off. And even though Green Bay looks good, I mean, you almost feel like when you look in the division, they are almost like the veteran team because, I mean, granted, they added some things in. But
their secondary got better this offseason.
The secondary got better, but overall, I mean, and they're healthy. A part of the issue last year for them defensively was obviously Aaron Rodgers went out, but then they had a lot of injury defensively. Now, what's interesting, and you brought up a good point, and I talk Green Bay because obviously, that's the matchup in Chicago that we just love. And it might end up being who is chomping for the division, to tell you the truth, are these two teams. I believe they're that good. The difference is I think that Green Bay just has a little bit more cohesiveness, especially defensively. And the Bears are trying to kind of create that mixture, and that can be, now they have to do it on the fly during the season.
I'm going to be curious to see how that defensive line performs without B.J. Raji, because that is a huge loss for them. Now, the starters didn't play in the fourth preseason game against who was it they played? Kansas City. There we go. I was watching it on NFL Network recently. So when the season starts and that force in the middle is not there, that's going to put extra pressure on Clay Matthews coming off the edge. That's definitely going to put more pressure on Julius Peppers. So with him not being there, that's going to be interesting to see how the defense adjusts to that.
And and let me just say this. I said it when they traded him, and I have no problem standing behind it. Julius Peppers will probably wow you when you see him in his opening NFL games. Trust me, when they play the Bears those 2 times, he's going to be coming after them. He's going to have something to prove. So he's going to look like the Julius Peppers you remember that came to you from Carolina, you will see in Green Bay. There's nothing the Bears could have done to honestly feel that would have made him play differently at this point.
I'm looking forward to see Jordan Mills cut block him.
I am. I think it's a great matchup. So, the Bears' schedule is set. I still stick to the fact that I believe they can go 11-5 because they have a schedule that works for them. I mean, if they can't, here's my thing. Obviously, the kickoff is September 7th, next Sunday. They're at home against Buffalo. Buffalo has not looked good, and they have lots of issues. This is called opportunity knocks. Don't open the door, bust it open.
Hurt people.
Hurt people.
Maybe
Send a message.
Maybe no Sammy Watkins to contend with. He's got injuries.
That's going to be huge.
Yes. The Bills right now have a lot of things they're trying to contend with. So you couldn't ask for a better opening opponent. You really couldn't. Now, obviously, week 2, you hit the road and you head out to San Francisco. But the 49ers have had their fair share of issues. They don't, trust me, they look nothing like Seattle looks. You don't look at the 49ers and say, I feel this is a team that is just going to be really hard to beat, because they have some issues themselves they're still dealing with. So if they can go out on the road in week 2 and win against San Francisco, that will speak volumes for them. So, their first 2 games, I think, are big, and then they see the Jets, Green Bay, and Carolina. That's their first 5 games. That's a manageable, I think, opening season.
I think San Francisco, with all the distractions going on over there.
They have a lot of distractions. They do.
They might not be in the mindset.
I mean, the rumor is that Harbaugh's not healthy. It's not happy there. They just have a lot of distractions off the field.
So what do you think? Do you think Buffalo, then San Francisco, we can be 2-0?
I know that there's a lot of, questions about San Francisco, but I just get this feeling because they're going to be the home team again.
Yeah, they are.
And the Bears have not won there since the 90s.
Well, guess what?
So I'm really afraid to say the Bears are going to go in there and clean house, but then
I'm not going to go that far.
Yeah, and then I'm afraid that something bad will happen from there. So I really.
Well, how about we do this?
I can't make a pick on that just yet.
I'll be the typical woman. Let's just get through game 1 first, Gabe, and then we can talk about week 2 after we get through week 1. How does that sound? Because now we get to really see the team in action. You get to see your first stringers on the field. We need to see that, because when you go through preseason, that gets very
wise.
It gets
Sports
diluted.
Chica.
So let's just get through week 1. All right. So that wraps up around the NFL. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Gabe is going to have his college football preview. Lamont Pope will be on talking Notre Dame, as well as Kyle Roche will talk Northwestern. And then obviously Gabe will talk some NIU with you. So stay tuned. The Sports Cypher will be right back.
Welcome back to the Sports Cypher. Gabe Salgado here. Feel free to call in 773-591-1690. Follow us on Twitter at the Sports Cypher. Follow me at Gabe Salgado82. And right now, I'm taking over the mic. We're going to talk a little bit of college football. I know Maya's dreaming about her Iowa Hawkeyes and longing for the glory days of Liddell Betts and Matt Bowen.
Ooh. Along with Hayden Fry. Don't forget Hayden Fry.
Oh, yes, we can't forget that too. So, but we're actually going to get into college football, talking about Notre Dame and Northwestern. And first up, we're going to have Lamont Pope. He is the Notre Dame beat writer for the Chicago Sun-Times and the Gary Post Tribune. He was on with us last week. And Lamont, thank you for joining us again.
Oh, thanks for having me back on the air.
Well, now let's be honest. Okay, it was a great victory for Notre Dame yesterday. You know, they look good on both sides of the ball, but again, let's be honest. You know, it's only Rice, and they have a long season ahead of them. Am I not mistaken about that?
Yeah, you know, entering the game, there's so many interesting storylines. Obviously, how would the team kind of respond given all the academic probe, missing the 5 guys? What would the team look like under new defensive coordinator Brian Van Gorder? And then the big one was, well, how would Everett Golson look like after missing last season? You know, first game back since the BCS title game against Alabama in January 2013, and he looked pretty good. Even though, like you said, it was against Rice. You know, for someone to not play for more than a year to have that kind of performance was very impressive.
I was definitely impressed with Everett Golson. I mean, the way he just carried that offense, and later in the game we saw Malik Zaire get a few reps. What did you think of the limited reps that he had?
Yeah, I mean, you know, right off the bat, his first play, big rushing gain, and so, you know, and Brian Kelly had a teleconference today, and he's like, you know, it's good always, you know, you've seen these things out of Malik during practice, but to actually have him in a game and to get those sort of reps, to have the first time to hear the crowd scream and be excited for him to get in the game, and then for him to actually get some few plays under his belt. You know, those are some things that you can't simulate during practice, and so very impressive with that. But you know, back to Everett. You know, there are a couple things with Everett. Running the ball, you know, that was an element that the team did not have last season out of the quarterback position, and he was able to do some things with his legs, scored 3 rushing touchdowns, and then passing the ball, you know, just the long bombs, you know, two touchdown passes, one 75 yards, the other one 53 yards, and so he showed some really great touch for someone who hadn't played in a long time.
You'd probably agree with me on this. I'd have to say, you know, Everett Golson, not only is he a better athlete than Tommy Rees, but he's probably a better passer because he's got a quicker release and he can throw farther. Would you agree with me on that?
Yeah, I was really impressed with his accuracy, you know, especially some of those deep balls. The second touchdown in particular, because there's some pressure being applied. He had to spin away from one guy, and then another guy was launching at him, and he was able to get the ball off in time, and he hit the receiver in stride in the end zone for the 53-yard bomb. And then there was another play which it could have been a touchdown, but the receiver dropped the ball, which might have been his best throw of the game. And so, you know, just his touch throughout the day was very impressive. But like, again, for someone who hadn't played for so long, to come on back and have that type of performance, you know, regardless of the opponent, I thought was very impressive. But then, you know, using his legs, here's someone who, and we got to see it. His first touchdown, his first rushing touchdown, it was a design run, 11 yards. You know, he just sort of went right back up the middle and scored. But the next two, he had to sort of scramble and create on his own. The second one, you know, he kind of darted and was able to make it on through. And then the last one was on a busted play in which, you know, the running back went one way, and he was like, all right, he froze for a second, and then just took on off and scored. And so just, you know, that added element is something that the offense was missing last year, and it's something that he's able to bring to the table.
Now let's talk about the Irish defense. They've probably been the most affected by, you know, with the current suspension and the academic situation, which I'll ask you about next. But what did you think of the defense's performance, and considering the changes and everything they've gone through over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I mean, and we talked about this a little bit last week, of just how young the defense was regardless, you know, even before losing, particularly Chivari Russell. You're not going to replace a guy like Chivari Russell at cornerback. But Cole Luke did a very good job. You know, Brian Kelly was very happy with the performance that Luke gave at one of the cornerback positions. On the other cornerback, guy from a transfer from Florida, Cody Riggs, you know, very solid player. And so Cody was able, you know, not only was he effective at, you know, defensively, but he made a huge difference in the punt return game. And so, you know, the corners played well. The safeties, they lost their starting safety, Austin Collinsworth. He suffered an MCL injury during practice last week, and so they're without him, and at times there's a little lack of communication between the safeties that were there, Max Redfield and Elijah Shoemate, and so that's an area that they're going to have to kind of get cleaned on up going forward with Michigan coming up. The linebacker play, you know, Jalen Smith's always going to be solid. You know, he's one of the best linebackers in the country. Joe Schmidt, you know, played really well, I thought. And then up front, they were able to shuffle a number of those guys on in, and a number of the guys got some reps. And so overall, I thought the defense performed pretty well.
Now, one last question before we let you go, Lamont. You wrote this week that Notre Dame has concluded its investigation into academic dishonesty or lack, or whatever the case may be, allegedly, and a fifth player has been suspended. Who is that fifth player, and what is the latest in the investigation?
Yeah, it's reserve safety, Isla Hardy. He's the fifth guy. And right now, like I said, the investigation portion, it's complete. The next phase, they're going to have the charges presented to them, and then they'll go in front of the Honor Code Committee, and they'll have their hearing. And so I don't know how long that whole process is going to take. It's sort of like a wait and see, just to see how long they get in front of the committee, and then the committee makes their decision. So the investigation portion's wrapping up. It doesn't appear like there's going to be any more players currently on the roster that are going to be kind of have to miss time because of this. And so now it's just sort of seeing what happens with the next steps in the process, and then getting the final verdict.
Lamont, where can we find you on Twitter, my friend?
I'm at Lamont Pope.
All right, Lamont, thank you for your time. We appreciate you coming back on the show. Lamont Pope, the Notre Dame beat writer for both the Chicago Sun-Times and the Gary Post-Tribune. And now we're going to switch gears and talk Northwestern and their beat writer from MidwayMadness.com, a position that I held just last season. Kyle Roche, thank you for coming on the show. How are you? Hello, Kyle, are you there? Kyle, are you there? Apparently we don't have Kyle, but the other team playing this week, Northern Illinois. I covered the game Thursday night for Chi City Sports. Go to ChiCitySports.com. You could go take a look at my stories based on their opener against Presbyterian. But just to give you an idea of what Northern Illinois is facing heading into this season, Jordan Lynch left such a lasting legacy at the quarterback position that head coach Rod Carey just can't seem to decide who the next man will be at the position. He played all three of his quarterbacks, Matt McIntosh, Drew Hare, and Anthony Maddie, in their opener on Thursday night. And really, all three quarterbacks showed me something different. McIntosh proved to be probably the best passer out of all of them. Drew Hare, he did a few things good, but I think that he could, show a little more arm strength. I definitely think that he's a good runner, but he definitely needs to show more in the passing game. And Anthony Maddie, really, aside from running the ball, he didn't really do much else beyond that. Now, granted, the Huskies did run the ball over 30 times while he was out there on the field. He basically played mop-up duty in the fourth quarter. So I definitely think that the quarterback situation is something that Northern Illinois needs to decide on soon, as they actually do head to Northwestern this coming week, and that's not going to be an easy game for them. And do we have Kyle on the line now? No? Okay, we do not have Kyle, but let's just give you the rundown on Northwestern. They opened up against California Berkeley just like they did last season, except this edition's game was in Evanston at Ryan Field. Wildcats lost 31-24. They were down 17-0 at one point. The offense really kind of dragged on in the first half, but in the second half they really fought back and, tried to muster up a little bit of a rally, but they fell just a touchdown short, obviously. The thing that concerned me the most about what was going on with Northwestern is just their defense. They just had no answer for California's spread offense. They just couldn't cover guys. They, had trouble making tackles, couldn't really get any pressure on the quarterback. And, California's trying a two-quarterback system this year, so that ought to be interesting. It definitely created some problems for Northwestern as far as that was concerned. But, Northwestern, again, they lose the season opener, but now they get to play Northern Illinois. And Northwestern's going to have another tough offense to contend with. And I believe we have Kyle now. Kyle, are you there?
Yes, hello.
All right, Kyle, thank you for joining us. And just as I was talking about with Northwestern, their defense really just had a tough time against California. What did you see when you were there?
Yeah, they just couldn't even stop them. Jared Goff just could pick them apart. Just anytime he dropped back, he was just able to find open receivers. And they had a freshman quarterback, Luke Rabinzer, who just came in and ran, and it got to the point where every time he stepped on the field, everyone in the stadium knew he was going to run, and it looked like everyone but Northwestern knew that. So they had a tough time from beginning to end. Just they had no idea what California was going to do.
Now let's talk to the offensive thing, the offensive end for Northwestern here. The first half, they really kind of struggled to find an identity, but then in the second half, they kind of tried to muster up a little bit of a rally, but came up short in the end. Overall, how did you think their offense performed on opening day?
Yeah, like you said, in the first half, they really struggled to get into any kind of rhythm. Cal's first possession, they came down the field and scored, and then Northwestern was putting together a nice drive, and then went for it on fourth down, and then got stopped. And ever since then, they just couldn't get it back. But like you said, in the second half, they really stepped it together. They started stringing together passes and runs, and that really ignited them in their attempt to come back.
How do you think the offense looked without Venrick Mark and without Christian Jones? Do you think that they can use those guys, or do you think they held their own without them?
Oh no, they definitely need. I would say they would need Venrick Mark more than anyone. They really don't have any of those go-to guys where they just give them the ball and they could kind of help them out. I mean, Trevor Simeon tried his best, but you could tell they were really lacking a go-to guy.
Now, this week, Northwestern's going to host Northern Illinois. I just talked about Northern Illinois, and, if they scored 55 points in their opener, they got a strong running game. They look really good on defense. What kind of matchup difficulties do you think they present for Northwestern?
I think, like you said, just the run in the pass, Cal kind of proved their weaknesses. Northwestern really doesn't have a strong defensive line to kind of push the pocket and kind of jam up the line for the run game. So I think if they can't do that again, then Illinois will have a real easy time.
All right, Kyle, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Where can we find you on Twitter?
You can find me at Kyle Roche 6 with the K and the R both capitalized.
All right, Kyle, thank you for your time. Sorry about the phone difficulties, and that was Kyle Roche. He's the Northwestern beat writer from MidwayMadness.com. Find him on Twitter. Good stuff there. So,
I can now resurface.
You can now resurface.
I could now resurface. That was Gabe giving his phenomenal college football preview. And by the way, I'm going to be equally balanced on this because I know I have a lot of listeners that are HBCU grads that went to historically black colleges and universities, and someone's like, hey, you should report on what we're doing. And actually, ESPN actually had a historically black college game on today, which I was kind of surprised. So definitely, as we move forward in the season, I'll make sure that we give updates. And actually, the Big Football Classic is coming to Chicago.
I want to say September 20th.
Yes. Morehouse will be featured, and I know there's quite a few Morehouse grads throughout the city of Chicago. So I do anticipate that game will be quite well attended. So definitely as a show.
Are you going?
I do plan on going. Matter of fact, there's a couple things I'm going to go to. On the 19th, the Chicago Cubs are actually hosting an HBCU game versus, I do believe it's the Dodgers, where tickets are only like $19.
Wow.
And they're giving away a special T-shirt that kind of celebrates historical black colleges and universities. So though I am not a Cub fan, and it does pain me to go occasionally, I'm actually going to attend that game. It's part of the festivities for the event that's going on.
You talk about Morehouse. I remember growing up in the 90s, and when I lived in Uptown, there were a lot of Morehouse hats. I don't know if they were just fans or if it was just the color scheme or what, but I remember seeing a lot of Morehouse hats on the streets of Uptown when I was a kid. It was interesting.
It's one of those historically black colleges that it gets a lot of support. Lots of kids go to school there, so definitely. So with that being said, thank you to Gianna's Pizza for the pre-show grub. It was yummy as usual. I had the shrimp basket. In fact, there was 3 shrimp baskets in the house.
Shrimp.
And then there was just a buffalo chicken salad.
Yum.
In the words of Homer Simpson,
it was good stuff. So check them out. Go to giannaspizza.com or pay them a visit at 1519 East 87th Street or call 773-734-9400. We had a full show tonight. We really did. So I have to say thank you, first of all, to our NFL Around the League guests. AFC North, Andrea Hanks, who is an NFL analyst and lead writer for Bleacher Report covering the AFC, talked about that for us. AJ Harris, who is a sports writer and analyst for BlueDewSportsRadio.com, talked Bears and NFC North as well. Then, of course, Gabe, who's my co-host, thank you once again for graciously co-hosting with me.
Well, thank you for graciously having me.
He did College Preview with Lamont Pope, who covered the Notre Dame beat for Post-Trib Sports and Sun-Times Sports.
Yes.
As well as we just had on Kyle Roche, who covers Northwestern. He's a beat writer for Midwest Madness. Thank you to my production crew.
Adios.
To Malcolm Rockhold, my technical producers on the ones and twos, and my extraordinary producer, Al Beard, for checking in.
AKA the Christian Jones Fan Club.
There you go, back to Behind the Glass. Make sure if you missed this, you check out the broadcast on Wednesday, 8:30 p.m., blogtalkradio.com/Maya Akai Presents. Make sure you check out my actual Facebook page at The Sports Cypher, at The Sports Chica.
At Gabe Salgado 82.
Good stuff. And my website, mayaakai.wordpress.com. That's it. We'll see you next week to talk Bears first opening season game against the Bills.
Enjoy the holiday, everyone. Be safe.
Be safe.
You are listening to a podcast of the Fahey and Chivari Show, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Thursdays, only on SportsTownChicago.com.
You're listening to Fahey and Chivari on SportsTownChicago.com.
Welcome back into the Fahey and Chivari Show here on SportsTownChicago.com in the League of Our Own. If you've been with us for the last 3.5 hours, glad you stuck around. It's time to talk to our freelance writer we always get to at this time, Gabe Salgado. He joins us on the Illinois Center for Broadcasting hotline. And, Gabe, I apologize for not having the Dr. Dre music, but for some reason the file wasn't working. But nonetheless, good to have you on the show. How are you today?
I really didn't notice.
Well, nonetheless, though, we'll get that hopefully fixed up for next week. But, yes, once again, Gabe Salgado with me here on the Fahey and Chivari Show, keeping me company here through the rest of the show now. Gabe, what you wanted to talk about today was Michael Sam, officially now part of the Dallas Cowboys practice squad. A good move on the part of Dallas to pick him up after St. Louis cut him before they made their respective 53-man roster. Good move on the Dallas part, you think, Gabe?
I really hope that they're doing this. Jerry Jones, we all know he's probably one of the wackiest owners in sports history, but I really hope Jerry Jones is doing this because he believes that Michael Sam can play and not just for publicity. Because we all know the Dallas Cowboys, they love publicity, and, Jerry Jones usually would do anything to get attention for the team. So I really hope that this is something that he's doing because he believes that Michael Sam can contribute as opposed to just doing it because he wants media attention.
I'm looking at the Dallas Cowboys depth chart right now, specifically on the defense, and they're starting 4 linemen. According to DallasCowboys.com, they have George Selvey, Nick Hayden, Henry Melton, a former Bear, and Jeremy Mincy as well. And some of the backups, DeMarcus Lawrence, Tyrone Crawford, Ken Bishop, LeVar Edwards. I'm looking at this line here in this depth chart, Gabe, and I'm thinking to myself, Michael Sam is actually, I think, a very well defensive line, I think good enough to be on this 53-man roster. Do you agree?
I definitely think that he showed some things in the preseason. He led the Rams in sacks, and he showed that he's got the quickness off the ball. He's got the explosiveness off the line. And, Dallas has had defensive line issues for the last couple of years, whether it be injuries or poor play. And I would not be surprised if Michael Sam ends up on the 53-man roster at some point this year. So like I said, I definitely think it was a good move. Like I said, hopefully they were doing it because of that and not just because of publicity, but they could definitely use help on that defensive line. You take a look at Henry Melton, for example, his injury history, and, a few other guys in that line, either they have injury issues or, like you said, have those guys you never even heard of. So hopefully, Michael Sam will get a chance at some point during the season because they could definitely use his skill set.
There was a big outcry on social media when Michael Sam was officially announced that he was cut by the St. Louis Rams team, and the outcry was, they cut him for his sexual orientation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Personally, when I heard that kind of outcry, I was outraged. Because that's not how Jeff Fisher runs his organization. Jeff Fisher is a very good NFL coach, and I doubt that's the reason why Michael Sam was cut even to begin with. I think it was strictly from a football standpoint. And also, if we look at the St. Louis Rams defensive line, it is absolutely stacked. It seemed to be, Gabe, and I want to get your thoughts, that the cut was just based on that there were too many good defensive linemen on the Rams.
Definitely. They definitely had a lot of depth at that position, but I hope that they would at least put him on the practice squad. I thought he was at least good enough to get a practice squad spot, but obviously, the Rams felt that they had other needs for that area as far as the roster was concerned. So, and you're right, Jeff Fisher's, pretty much been a stand-up guy in the NFL, so, hopefully, it was just from a football standpoint and not because of anything else. We probably will never know. But the interesting thing is, as soon as it was announced that he didn't even make the practice squad, WWE sent Michael Sam an invite for next week's Monday Night Raw, and they were ready to give him an open mic and, as they say, quote-unquote, let him tell his side of the story, and which would have been very interesting considering that next week WWE Raw's got to compete with Monday Night Football. So, if that ended up happening and Michael Sam didn't get signed by the Dallas Cowboys, it would have been curious to see, if he would have taken the invite, and if so, would he have actually told, the truth from his side of the story, or would it just end up being some cheap wrestling angle? So, it would have been interesting to see if that would have played out at all. But luckily, he was signed by the Dallas Cowboys, and I think that at some point they'll make good use of him.
I'm looking at sportsreference.com stats on Michael Sam back when he was in college at the University of Missouri playing for the Tigers, and Gabe Salgado with me here on the Illinois Center for Broadcasting hotline. If interested in career in broadcasting, go to beonair.com. His career totals at Missouri: 60 solo tackles, had 18.5 sacks. He had 2 interceptions, forced 5 fumbles in his collegiate career, was named co-defensive SEC Defensive Player of the Year last season. I mean, you talk about, it's not that based on the sexual orientation is why, not the reason why the St. Louis Rams had cut Michael Sam. It was basically from a football standpoint. Is there a chance, based on the stats I just read and the kind of person that Michael Sam is, not just not with the off the field issues, let's forget about that, but his on field play and the way that you mentioned how he led the Rams in sacks in the preseason, is the prediction? If I give you a prediction, if Michael Sam plays on an NFL team and gets in NFL action within the first 10 weeks, is that realistic?
I definitely think it is. You just take a look. I mean, his college numbers, the knock on him coming out of college is, one, he didn't exactly have the ideal size, as he's only 6'2", about 250, 260. Couldn't really contribute on special teams, and, they thought that, he was more of a situational pass rusher as opposed to both a pass rusher and a run blocker. So that was kind of the knock on him coming out of college. But I definitely think that if you put him on the active roster and give him a few snaps, at some point he'll make a couple of plays for you. So, perhaps maybe a situational pass rusher, maybe in third down set, that could be, enough for him to get on an NFL roster and see some playing time. But again, just for him to have the opportunity is huge, and hopefully, he'll get to expand on that during the season.
I find it crazy how, with the Dallas Cowboys and the claim that it's always, quote-unquote, America's team, that being the Dallas Cowboys, and that the big spotlight has always been on quarterback Tony Romo. And I find it interesting, and I want your thoughts on this, Gabe, that if there's one thing that had to take Tony Romo away from the spotlight in Dallas and the rest of the NFL nation, it was a player like Michael Sam, who, again, was signed to the practice squad and had his own press conference. Isn't it crazy how the story of Michael Sam is now the bigger spotlight in Dallas right now than Tony Romo?
I mean, you kind of figured that was going to happen. I mean, obviously, when he was drafted by the Rams, it became a big media thing as well, just because of his background and his story, because, honestly, you never had an openly gay player in the NFL. I mean, I'm sure there probably has been players who didn't come out over the years, and obviously over time there were guys that came out after they retired, and there's probably guys who never admitted it at all. But, Michael Sam let everybody know the second that he entered the NFL draft, and, so you knew there was going to be a media circus. But, yeah, the fact that Michael Sam's getting more media attention than Tony Romo definitely says something. And at the same time, I don't think, Tony Romo has done anything over the last couple of years to deserve insane media attention. The injuries and, his inconsistent play kind of really hurt the Dallas Cowboys. But, I definitely think that, Dallas is doing the right thing by giving Michael Sam an opportunity. And hopefully it's just because they believe he deserves an opportunity as opposed to just, wanting media attention.
The worry also with Michael Sam is that based on what we saw with the Rams cutting Michael Sam in the final cuts before they made their 53-man roster, now that he's on the Dallas Cowboys practice squad, the fear is that Michael Sam is just going to be one of your players that just jumps from team to team, maybe lasting a couple seasons here, a season there. Is that kind of maybe what we could be seeing from Michael Sam, that he could be playing on 5-6 NFL teams once his potential NFL career comes to an end?
I hope not. I mean, I hope that, he could find somewhere where he could have, a somewhat lengthy career and, can get a chance to prove himself. I mean, obviously, you have guys in the league who have been career practice squatters, but the thing is too now with the new rules, he can only be eligible for the practice squad for the first 3 seasons of his career. After that, if he's on an inactive roster, he's not going to be playing anywhere. So, hopefully, the Dallas Cowboys and Michael Sam will have, at least somewhat of a long-term future together.
And you mentioned about how he's not going to be eligible to be on the active roster and be in NFL games right away. If he is in that, when he does get his chance, if he gets his chance as well, obviously the storyline is going to come back about the off the field issues that Michael Sam had, being open about his sexual orientation. Is that the big worry about once we look on the sunset of Michael Sam's football career from collegiate or the NFL regardless, is one of the big glaring things is not going to be necessarily looking at his football career on the field, but the overglaring that he was the first openly gay player in the NFL?
I think so, and hopefully there will be a day where that won't be such a big deal in any sport. Because to me personally, it's all about whether or not you can play. I mean, obviously, from what we hear, that hasn't, his sexual orientation hasn't really been causing too much of a distraction, and didn't cause it with the Rams locker room. And so far, everybody in Dallas has welcomed him with open arms. And hopefully, at the end of the day, it'll be about, hey, he came to play, and he made a career for himself. And hopefully, there'll be a day where things like that won't matter in the NFL anymore. Because to me, it's all about whether or not you can play.
Gabe Salgado again with me here on the Fahey and Chivari Show. Chivari had to take a leave after the 1:30 update. He'll be back with me next week on the show, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Gabe, always appreciate you dropping the knowledge here on the program. One more thing before we let you go. Obviously, the NFL openers tonight, Packers, Seahawks, and Sunday the Bears open up against the Buffalo Bills. Bears, who do you got?
I'd have to pick the Bears. I know there's a lot of questions about their defense, especially since Lance Briggs missed Monday's practice to open up his restaurant. I know there's concern about special teams, but let's face it, the Bills are probably in a worse situation. They have some injuries that they're dealing with, and they haven't looked really good in the preseason on either side of the ball. Yes, they have a few good players here and there, such as Mario Williams on the defensive side and E.J. Manuel on the offensive side, but really the Buffalo Bills are a team that's still trying to find its identity and is still trying to piece itself together. So hopefully the Bears can take advantage of that and come home with a victory.
Do you have a score for Sunday for the Bears to win?
You know what? I honestly don't, because because it all depends on, one, can the offense continue their pace from last season, and two, has the defense truly improved? So we won't know until Sunday. So until then, it's really hard for me to give a score at this point.
Understood, Gabe. Gabe Salgado with me here on the Fahey and Chivari Show. You guys can follow Gabe on Twitter at Gabe Salgado82. Gabe, we appreciate you dropping the knowledge. We'll talk to you next week. Have a great day, man.
All right, take care.
Gabe Salgado, freelance writer with me here on SportsTownChicago.com. As I just mentioned, you guys can follow Gabe on Twitter at Gabe Salgado82.
You're listening to Fahey and Chivari on SportsTownChicago.com.